The following Pharma Essentia podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and cannot be considered as medical advice. Please speak to a healthcare professional before making any treatment decisions.
Hey, Josh.
Hey, Kay.
And as always, hello, listeners.
And viewers.
Welcome back to the MPN Pod, Stories from the Marrow.
A podcast about polycythemia vera and essential thrombocythemia.
We have got a fantastic episode for you today. I cannot wait to tell you who is returning to the podcast.
Ooh, a returning guest? Kay, is this our first podcast regular?
He's one of our favorites, and I am so excited to share with everyone how he's been doing since we last heard from him in Season 1.
Season 1? Throwback!
All this and more brought to you by Pharma Essentia.
Thanks, Pharma Essentia. All right, Kay, enough being coy. Who do we have on the show today?
You're trying to rush me. Don't kill my fun.
Geez, sorry. How do you want to introduce today's guest?
I'm going to let our guest give us a few fun facts about their story with polycythemia vera so far, and I think it'll jog your memory.
Wait, I have to guess? Can we cut? I didn't study.
I think you're going to remember.
56 years old presently. I'll soon be 57 in about a month.
I recognize that voice, but who do I know that's 56 going on 57 with a birthday that's in about a month? That makes him an Aries or a Taurus?
I was diagnosed with polycythemia vera back in January of 2021. That winter, I decided to hike the Presidentials in the White Mountains. And then that summer, I did a long trail hike in Vermont, which is 273 miles, as a fundraiser for MPNs.
Oh, the hiker. I remember.
Knew you would.
The following year, I did a soul-to-soul hike for the MPN Foundation, which was a team of 22, 11 from Canada and 11 from the United States. We hiked out in the Rockies in Colorado, and then we went up to Waterton National Park and did a hike there as patients and caregivers, doctors, and research scientists for blood cancer.
And then he took on the Tour Mont Blanc.
For those who aren't familiar with the Tour Mont Blanc, here's what our guest told us about it in his first appearance on the show.
So the Tour Mont Blanc is a 110-mile hike around the mountain of Mont Blanc. So you start in France in Chamonix, and then you hike counterclockwise. So you're going to go through the French Alps, the Italian Alps, the Swiss Alps, back into France.
And then he completed the hike and had that amazing hot chocolate.
I thoroughly enjoyed hot cocoa in Italy, which has to be eaten with a spoon, which is the way I remember my grandmother making it.
How could I forget? Do you know how many hot chocolates I've had since the last time we talked to Gary? Oh, Gary, look at that. I figured it out. Our guest today is Gary.
I'm Gary Linehan.
We are going to hear more from Gary Linehan, Bostonian, educator, hiker, family man, living with PV, right after this quick break.
So, you're learning about myeloproliferative neoplasms on the MPN Pod, Stories from the Marrow.
Now get ready to take the next steps on your PV journey with Piece Together PV, an educational site on everything polycythemia vera. And for those living with essential thrombocythemia, you can find similar support at Piece Together ET. These sites help empower people living with MPNs to learn about their options, speak up, and make informed long-term decisions. They can help you understand test results, set health goals, and create a plan to advocate for yourself. Check out piecetogetherpv.com and piecetogetheret.com to learn more. And we're back.
Thanks for sticking around. Kay, I'm so excited to catch up with Gary. As we've heard from guests in the past, polycythemia vera is something you live with for the long term. I'm curious about what the last few years have been like for Gary. His symptoms, his treatment plan, his attitude, has any of it changed?
Luckily, we have a whole episode to get into all that and more. But before we get any updates, I'd like to do a little recap of Gary's journey with polycythemia vera thus far.
Good call. I could definitely use a bit of a refresh myself. So, Gary was diagnosed with PV in 2021.
Correct. I want to hear a bit from Gary's story to diagnosis that we first heard in Season 1. Let's toss it to Gary from 2 years ago.
Has it been 2 years already? It feels like yesterday.
I would say about 2012, 2013, when I was hiking, as I was going down the mountain, I would feel this burning sensation in my toes, but I just assumed it was because I was going down the mountain, my toes were probably bumping into the front of my boots. So eventually I went to the doctor in the winter, December of 2020. They took some blood tests and it came back with a JAK2 mutation. No idea what that was. I asked a friend of mine at work, he was actually the principal at the time, because his wife was a nurse. I said, Mike, what's a JAK2 mutation? What does that mean? And he knew exactly what it meant. He knew it was cancer, but he said, I don't know, Gary, but it doesn't sound good. Make sure you get it checked out. The fact that I was diagnosed with anything when they said the word cancer, I was honestly angry, because I think I take good care of myself for my whole adult life. And I was just like, I had never been on any medications or anything like that. My cholesterol was low. I was really taken aback, and I was very concerned, because that word cancer can be powerful if you let it. And I did for a little while, until I realized that, there was a poet, he said, to live forever is not our victory. So it's the quality of life that I look for now, and not the length of life. And my dad just passed this June, so I feel like the lessons he gave me, the introspection that he had, was a gift to me in moving forward.
That was a great recap, Kay. I forgot that Gary had so many powerful quotes in his back pocket to help describe his journey.
We know from there, Gary started receiving phlebotomies every 2 weeks.
Of course. I'm glad Gary was diagnosed and received treatment, but man, 2 phlebotomies a month. And if I remember correctly, wasn't Gary afraid of needles?
It was tough. I had phlebotomy about once every 2 weeks when I was first diagnosed. I didn't like that. I wasn't fond of needles. My blood numbers never came fully in control. And it was in about April 2022, Dr. Hobbs at Mass General recommended a new treatment for me. And when I started that treatment, by September of 2022, my numbers were normal. And that's really been a game changer. So that was last year, April 2025, Dr. Hobbs put me through, and some other PV patients, through the cardio lifestyle program, and diet, nutrition, and exercise has paid dividends along with the medical treatment. So that's where I am right now.
What a fantastic update. It's great to hear that Gary's doctor recommended a different treatment plan for him a few years ago, especially given how awful it must have been to be going for so many phlebotomies.
Remember, phlebotomies can help to temporarily reduce red blood cell counts, but they do not reduce your white blood cell or platelet counts. Controlling all 3 blood cell counts is important in the management of PV to reduce the risks of blood clots and/or progression.
So, if you're currently only managing your PV with phlebotomies, talk to your doctor about different options.
Deciding on your treatment is a collaboration for sure, and having a proactive care team as well as a strong relationship with your doctor can make all the difference in your journey with polycythemia vera.
So, Gary's reported some positive changes in the last couple years. I'm wondering what those changes are.
It's something that I live with, but through my attitude, through my management, it's not in charge anymore.
In our past conversations with Gary, he mentioned experiencing a few symptoms commonly associated with PV, like fatigue and a burning sensation in his extremities.
The burning is almost, it's so infrequent. I would say maybe it happens once or twice a year. And the fatigue is very difficult for me to assess because I'm so active. I now have 2 grandchildren, and I have a job that's very demanding. So I don't necessarily assess my fatigue to PV. I don't attribute it to PV. So I don't know, but sometimes it's in the back of my head. Is the fatigue due to PV? But then I think about what I've done that day. I'm up at 4:30 every morning. So I think, a 9 o'clock bedtime is reasonable for anybody. But, I don't really have those symptoms anymore, thankfully. And I really do attribute that to the new treatment I'm on, but also to the diet. There's a lot you can do with diet, and MGH was really helpful with that. Sugar intake is crucial to inflammation, and I've lowered that.
Wow, that's nothing short of remarkable.
I know, such a massive reduction in symptoms.
Oh, yeah. I meant waking up at 4:30 every morning, working a demanding job, having 2 grandchildren, keeping active, and staying awake until 9, which even I struggle to do, and all I have is 2 dogs.
I mean, that is pretty incredible too. And it's evidence that Gary's found a treatment plan that really works for him, enabling him to keep as active as he'd like. When you're able to mitigate symptoms, it's far easier to have the lifestyle you'd like to have, regardless of your diagnosis.
For our listeners who might be interested in adjusting their care, I'm wondering, how did Gary end up finding a treatment plan that works so well for him?
Consultation with experts, the doctors, the nutritionist, the dietitian, the cardiologist. I lean on the medical experts in Boston. I found a doctor I trust, and I think that's important for any polycythemia patient.
So Gary assembled a care team of experts he trusted, various specialists that could help him create a holistic lifestyle to make him as comfortable and as symptom-free as is currently possible.
I'd love to hear more about what this has enabled Gary to do. He mentioned a demanding job. If I remember correctly, Gary's an educator?
Yep, and since we last spoke, Gary stepped into the role of school principal.
Okay, promotion. Congratulations, Gary. Man, all of these updates are absolutely incredible. How's the new gig going for him?
It's different. It's exciting. It's challenging, but it's also rewarding. As a classroom teacher for 24 years, I do find that the more removed I am from the students, the less rewarding it is, because I love being in touch with the students, talking to the students. I taught history, so it's different, but I like it. It is rewarding, but it's you're dealing with personnel rather than students, so there's a lot of bureaucracy that goes into it, but I like it.
Well, I'm glad to hear Gary's enjoying it and finding the new work rewarding. I know some people who live with PV are worried that it'll impact their careers, and hearing this is a good reminder that with the right support and treatment plan, many people are able to keep doing the work and living the life that's important to them.
That's a good point. Here's what Gary had to say about balancing his health and his lifestyle.
A healthy mindset, healthy diet, good sleep hygiene is important, and consultation constantly with your doctor. Every body is custom made, so I think it's important for patients to really consult with their doctor, because what works for me may not work for someone else. I always make the analogy that, the New England Patriots could run their offense because they had Tom Brady. Another quarterback wouldn't be able to run that offense. So you have to customize whatever your strategy is and whatever your treatment is. And that comes from consultation with experts.
It's such a good metaphor that I'll forgive him for the Patriots reference.
Okay, Tom Brady aside, Gary's making a lot of sense. I like how he phrases that everybody is custom made. It's important to work closely with your doctor to build a treatment plan that aligns with your goals and what matters most to you.
Gary has also mentioned a few times now that staying active and maintaining a new diet has been really beneficial.
Oh yeah, how's that going for him?
Here's what Gary said about listening to his body and maintaining his lifestyle.
It's interesting. I've always been very disciplined with exercise. So that's never been an issue for me. Even if I'm tired, I'm going to go exercise. It's the diet that's tough for me because I have a vicious sweet tooth. So that's where I try to be much more disciplined. And then, of course, spending quality time with those you love, your family, your friends, is important too.
I can certainly relate to an ongoing battle with a vicious sweet tooth.
Oh, yeah, that struggle is universal. I like how Gary mentioned spending quality time with your loved ones in regards to staying active. Staying active isn't just about exercising, it's about staying engaged in your hobbies, interests, and communities in spite of your diagnosis.
Exactly. And of course, Gary had some great advice to share about staying active while living with PV.
I would definitely consult with your doctor. Everybody's custom made. You got to find out what your body's parameters are in order to stay active. And I don't think necessarily, like, some PV patients might not be into physical activity, but I think if they find something that brings them intrinsic value, whether it's art, whether it's music, to discipline yourself to participate in those events, or to stay active in your music, stay active in your art, in your reading, whatever it is, whatever outlet you have.
I love this advice. Activities that bring you intrinsic value keep you grounded in yourself amidst the chaos of a new diagnosis. It's so important to remember that PV does not define you, and actively engaging in your hobbies is a great way to keep that front of mind.
And for Gary, that's always been hiking. Does Gary have any hikes planned?
Of course, Gary is currently planning on hiking the West Highland Way in Scotland this summer.
Oh my gosh, I love Scotland. I actually celebrated my 21st birthday there. I've been twice.
Hey, Gary's been there a couple of times too. Maybe you guys ran into each other.
Oh shoot, I should have invited him to my birthday.
All right, back to the West Highland Way hike.
Right. Is Gary pumped? I hope he's pumped.
I've been a few times, and I love Scotland. It's a beautiful place. It's got rugged beauty. I love the smells. I love the people there. That very friendly. My wife's grandmother is from there. I have ancestry there, and this is a hike that my wife's going to join me on. So that was a huge factor. Also, there's a few people joining me. I got 2 women from Seattle that I met on the Tour Mont Blanc hike, and they're going to be coming. I have one gentleman from Ireland that I met on the Tour Mont Blanc hike. He's going to be joining us. We got a couple from British Columbia that are thinking of joining. One is a PV patient as well. And one woman from Chicago who's Lisa Gould. Her father wrote a book about MPNs. He actually passed away from blood cancer a number of years ago. She may join us. And I put the invite out there to other patients and caretakers as well. And we'll see if we have more people. But right now, I think we got five of us going.
I remember that from our last interview with Gary. He's so good at fostering community, and not just with other hikers. He also uses hikes to connect with other people living with MPNs and PV.
I know. I remember Gary bringing cookies to his doctor's appointments to connect with his healthcare team.
Well, that would absolutely work on me.
Me too. I was also curious about how Gary was training for his Scotland hike.
Doing cardio, doing resistance training, and getting out there on hike, trying to get out there on hikes, once a week at least. I'm getting ready for, they have midges, which I guess are worse than no-see-ums. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to deal with that.
Midges are the worst. They're little flies that bite you, and the bites are so itchy, like beyond mosquito. Hang in there, Gary. But bugs aside, is there anything in particular Gary's looking forward to on the hike?
The rugged beauty, the highlands, the rivers, the lakes. Not going to lie, I'm looking forward to the camaraderie on the trail, but also the pub nights and a good dram of scotch.
That does sound pretty awesome.
And there's another reference to community.
Gary has such an incredible journey with PV. It's really inspiring to see him so actively engaged in his community and activities and his treatment plan. Considering it's been a few years since he received his diagnosis, I'm wondering if he has any advice for people who were just diagnosed, or heck, any advice he might give to his younger self.
Here's what Gary had to say, given his 5-year perspective on his PV journey.
It's interesting. I mean, you can tell somebody this, but when they hear it the first time, it's when I first heard it, I'm not listening to every word. I guess it's not a death sentence. It's manageable. It's something you can live with. Over the winter, I reread Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And, Viktor Frankl was psychologist. He decided to stay in Europe during the Holocaust. He could have escaped, but he felt a duty to his family. He ends up losing his entire family during the Holocaust. But he talks about, when you can't change a situation, you're challenged to change your attitude towards that and how you're going to deal with that. And, suffering, he says, suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. So if a guy like that was able to find meaning in his situation, I think it challenges all humanity to find meaning in their challenges, whether they're small or whether they're enormous.
I love that. Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. And to listeners who've just been diagnosed, Gary says,
take a deep breath. Don't allow cancer to define who you are. Don't give it that power. Consult with the experts, not the internet or AI. Research is developing all the time on this cancer. My treatment was approved while I was, the first year I was diagnosed. So I feel like the medicine and the treatments are constantly improving. When you're first diagnosed, allow the emotions, let the emotions flow, cry if you have to, but don't let the emotions control what you're going to do.
Okay. It was so good to hear from Gary again. I mean, his first episodes were awesome, so I'm not surprised, but it warms my heart to hear that he's doing so well and still going on those mountains. Can we follow Gary online somehow? What if our listeners want to reach out or maybe even join one of his hikes?
I have an Instagram, and I kind of checked out of social media back in January of 2024, but I could resurrect that. And the Instagram is just my name, Gary Linehan, so they could follow along on that, and I'll post during the trip. And if they could, if they want to get in touch with me through Instagram, they could send me a message on that. And if they're interested in joining, I'd love it, and I could get them all the information they need.
Literally following him right now. His handle is at Gary Linehan.
I can't wait to hear about the Scotland hike. Gary, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast to update us on your journey. We are so excited for you, and we really appreciate your perspective on living with PV. There's nothing like a lived patient experience.
Agreed. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in.
We will see you next time
on the MPN Pod, Stories from the Marrow,
a podcast about polycythemia vera and essential thrombocythemia. Bye-bye.
Cheerio the no. That's how they say goodbye for now in Scotland.
The MPN Pod, Stories from the Marrow, is produced by Believe Limited and Bloodstream Media and made possible thanks to our sponsor, Pharma Essentia. The MPN Pod is hosted by me, Kay Vermeil, and my co-host, Josh Bragg. If you like the show, please share it with anyone for whom it might make a difference, and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We'll see you next time.